The imposter syndrome. It happens to many of the most successful people, and it certainly happens to those of us who are less than fabulously successful. We feel like somehow we didn't do it, we haven't done it, or we won't ever be able to do it. This background noise in our own psyche is what I'd like to discuss today, and perhaps find a way to take that from first place to no place in your psyche. And if it's not first place, it might be in there anyway. But when you stretch to be the best person you can be, it's awfully important that you use all the skills and all the techniques you know, because you're going to be confronted by your own fears and the outside world. And you will need to be as strong as you possibly can. Most of us in this room are over 20. And so since we are over 20, we are now the parents of us. We are the ones who are our own parent. And we have had, of course, parents in the past, and maybe your parents are alive today. But essentially, when it comes to what your life is about, it was about what they said to you back then, but today it is about how you treat yourself. And so today I'd like to talk about how to parent yourself, how to come from that place in which love and compassion is the currency of your conversations, rather than what many of us have going on inside, which is there is a tape that keeps replaying about somehow we're inadequate, that something is wrong with us, something is missing, somehow we blew it. And this is not just from your parents, but it has been built into the culture for many years that, and I don't mean many like 20, I mean like hundreds of thousands maybe of years, that there is essentially something inadequate, wrong about you. That the true measure of you is something less than enough. And if everyone is aware of that as you are, you would be embarrassed. You would feel like a failure. You would show up and people would think less of you than they do today. This sense has been coined the imposter syndrome. It happens to many of the most successful people, and it certainly happens to those of us who are less than fabulously successful. We feel like somehow we didn't do it, we haven't done it, or we won't ever be able to do it. This background noise in our own psyche is what I'd like to discuss today, and perhaps find a way to take that from first place to no place in your psyche. And if it's not first place, it might be in there anyway. I have a friend who recently died, but his favorite phrase was, "Not always right, but never in doubt." And it really worked for him. We lived together many years ago, and he was in a pretty difficult time at that point. He was working in San Francisco, and he was working as an underling for a guy who was fairly narcissistic. And he wasn't being paid a lot of money, but he was in a very high stressful job. And I remember him talking to himself in the mirror in the morning in the bathroom. And he would say affirmations to himself in the mirror. And you know, I was of the age in which I thought I didn't really need anything. Do you know what I mean? And I thought, wow, how weird is that? But when you stretch to be the best person you can be, it's awfully important that you use all the skills and all the techniques you know, because you're going to be confronted by your own fears and the outside world. And you will need to be as strong as you possibly can. And so one of the things that turned out about this guy was he became very successful in the same field he was struggling in the beginning. He became the go-to guy if we needed money, essentially, is what it boils down to. If somebody, one of the tribe was out of luck and desperate, he would show up. And so your compassion to yourself is not simply a gift to you, but it's a gift to everyone. Because when you have become deeply loving and compassionate to yourself, that's when it's easy for you to be deeply and compassionate and understanding for others. Because this upwelling of doubt or of self-condemnation can come at any stage in your life. It can come as a rookie, as you're trying to break into the field. It can come when you're on top and you have that lingering doubt that you aren't doing it right. And it can come when you retire and you go, the very thing that made me feel like I was a winner, now I don't have, I must be less than. And if we haven't practiced from right along, from the time we're in our 20s to the time we're retired, if we haven't practiced managing our own doubts and condemnation of ourselves and our own critic, internal critic, if we haven't learned how to deal with that, then it will come back to bite us at any age. Because it lurks, waiting. Because it's ingrained in the culture, it's ingrained in your family, it's ingrained in your training of who you are. It is not the truth, it is not the absolute, it is not right, it's just there. Do you know what I mean? Just because you've heard it a lot doesn't mean it's really true. Oh, many of you probably have managed this, but you still know what I'm talking about. And as we get older, we may even need to be reminded, because as we get older, then some of the things that propped up our self-esteem are gone. They have shifted. They're not there anymore because maybe it was work, or maybe it was some relationships you had, or who knows, maybe it was money, maybe it was your athletic ability, whatever. But they can diminish, so there can be a time in which they're growing, and then there can be a time in which those props seem to be going away. And so coming back to this, I think, applies at every age, from the time we take ownership of our life until we finish. There's a story in the East of a statue. I've told this before. The statue was solid gold. It was a Buddha, and it was revered in the whole town. Everybody loved this statue. But one year, that town was being invaded, and so to protect the statue, and especially to keep it from being stolen, they covered it in mud. And that mud, it wasn't that attractive as a mud statue, and it wasn't that special, and nobody wanted to steal it and take it home as a trophy, and so it stayed there. Years went by and people forgot, and one day it rained and the roof leaked and it began to wash away the mud, and people saw for the first time in beyond anyone's memory, for the first time they noticed, there's gold under there, look. And they washed it clean, and there it was, this beautiful golden statue that had been with them the whole time. They just didn't know the wealth and the beauty they possessed. And isn't that the way it is with us, until we learn to wash away some of the critique, some of the losses we've experienced, some of those embarrassments, some of the bad feelings we have about ourselves. I was thinking about this, and this passage from the Beatitudes came to mind, and this is multiple translations of that from the Aramaic. Blessed are those who are merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And of course we usually think, we'll do unto others as you would have them do unto us. Perfect translation, in my opinion. But also there is that mercy toward ourselves, where we take in the feeling and own it and find acceptance for it. And once we find acceptance for it, we investigate it and we see what it is and where it came from. And we also bring to that degree of investigation an open heart, so that, quite often when you come to investigate something, you will find that you are turned off by it. You have an aversion to it. You don't want to be part of that. And the deeper you investigate, the more it feels bad. If you don't bring an open heart when you investigate, you have a chance of not actually contributing to your healing, but to just reinforce what was already a problem. So when you open the idea, when you pay attention to it, be sure to open to it and investigate, yes, but also bring an open heart, a sense of acceptance. Oh, it can be here. This feeling state can be here, and I am not destroyed by it, and I'm not so repulsed by it that I can't go deeper. And in going deeper, you have a chance to find the insight behind that, the pearl that's inside there. But also when the heart is open, there is a tenderness about us. We're not just the thinking thing, we're the feeling thing, and the compassionate thing. And that compassion can come to this moment and make space and make acceptance and make a sense of love, that you have a place, this wounded you have a place with me. I don't have to deny that you are there. I don't have to do addictive behavior to hide you. I don't have to be an outward success for you to be part of me and me to be okay. I can just be okay because I can accept you and have space for you enough that you can come home. And so much of that is coming home. It's feeling the healing that would happen when you feel like you belong. The sense that I don't have to be rejected because in some way I didn't succeed, or in some way someone said something to me, or at some point I dropped the ball, or I was embarrassed in front of someone. I don't have to be excluded from the community of you because of that. And so this sense of belonging is a huge part of that. A few years ago, maybe last year, our theme was belonging. And it was because we had been away from COVID for so long, and people were just coming back, and all that isolation made us feel like we didn't have a home. And then suddenly we're back here, and it's like we haven't quite learned how to negotiate with each other our space. So we just made that a theme. You belong. You still do. But today we're working on having all parts of you belong to you. A few years ago, I was up in Chautauqua, which is a retreat center for adults, kind of like summer camp for adults in upper New York. I was staying at where they have the guest ministers stay. And there also some people there were some gang members that had been brought there by Father Doyle, who runs this healing place and workplace in Southern California. And he was the guest speaker, one of the prime speakers of the week. And he told many stories of these gang members who have had many layers of rejection and feeling like they don't belong, and reasons to come down on themselves. Many of them have been incarcerated. Most of them are tattooed, and he wrote a book about, I think it was the tattooed on your heart. There's a story he tells, and there was a big, muscular gang member who came to see him, kind of intimidating physically, and he had the time with Father Doyle by himself, and just in the waiting room were all these other gang members. And he was not part of the group yet. And he came to Father Doyle and said, "You're the father of these guys out here." And Doyle was about to say something when he said, "You're the father of them. I have a question for you. Would you let me be your son?" This big, intimidating man started to cry. And the tears were rolling down his face. And Father Doyle leaned over and said, "What a gift to be able to be a father of a son like you." And the boy said, "That's all I ever wanted my father to say." Now, for most of us, many of us in this room anyway, we'll never have our parents say that because they're not here. They may have said it even later, but there is, in the history of your life, there have been moments in which you wanted them to say that, and they were too busy doing what they had been taught themselves, which is that if you aren't of the certain way, that you're not acceptable, right? If you're not smart enough, fast enough, winning enough, strong enough, you don't cry, then you're not acceptable. And they're passing it down from generation to generation, and I'm sure they had it before because their parents did, and their parents before them, etc. And so it's very much the cultural thing. And if you happen to be of a minority culture, you have that overlay as well. If you're not of this type, then you're not acceptable too. And so that doubles down on that sense of rejection. And a secondary burden to carry. Only you at this stage in your life can fix it. Now, you may have friends who help, or spouses or lovers, and they can do so much for you, but they cannot do it without your cooperation, without your willingness to change the way you have programmed yourself to hear. Because people can say you are great 1,000 times over, and you will never hear it if you don't open your ears to hear. They can be as loving to you as possible, and somehow you could miss it if you don't invite your own psyche to change by being merciful to you. Now, in Buddhism, there's a practice called rain. It comes out of the Western tradition, English-speaking tradition of Buddhism. And basically, rain means that you recognize something, and then the second thing is that you accept it. So you recognize you have an emotion, you recognize you have a thought, or you recognize that you're not feeling good or whatever. You just recognize. And you can recognize anything. It could be joy or upset, but you're staying in a state of awareness, which is mindfulness in short. You're mindful of what's going on inside you. You recognize. And then the next thing is to accept it. And by accept it, it just means to make some space for it. and say, yes, of course, you can be here. Why not? Why wouldn't you be here? Of course, we're in this human experience. Of course, yes, accept it. And then, if you've come to the place where you have some acceptance, then the next letter is I, which is investigate. Investigate deeper. And it is said that your problems will disappear, according to the Buddhist tradition, if you investigate deeply enough. That you will come to understanding, that you will come to a place of peace, a recognition of the background, or whatever it is, the cause, the solution. If you go deep enough, you will have that. And then at that point, you can have non-attachment. So then you can have it without it being you. And you realize that this is a common experience among humanity. You recognize that everybody gets angry, everybody feels lonely, everybody feels unloved, everybody has all the emotions you're having, and you can come to a place of non-attachment. It's like, I am now sitting in a seat of awareness, and in this seat of awareness, I realize it is just the human condition. You might talk about it in the third person rather than in the first person. It's like, not I am angry, but there is anger. Because it's not you. Because you have shifted from the one who is caught in this to the one who is aware of this. And that is a beautiful shift. This rain leaves you at a place which is recognition, acceptance, investigation, and then non-attachment, leaves you in a place where you now have cleared the ground. You have made clear this thicket. And it's time to nurture and grow something new. Love and compassion toward yourself, mercy, tenderness, deepening of your appreciation of who you are, independent of all those things you thought you had to do to be accepted, independent of that, that you are inherently beautiful and good. So Father Doyle has this thing where it says, you belong, and you have indomitable goodness in you. Those are two of the pillars of how he teaches people to come to a healing so that they can be productive citizens in the world and get out of the cycle of violence. You belong. You are inherently good. And the third one is, you are cherished. And when people feel cherished, their brains change, their heart changes, their behavior changes. You are cherished. And there's a very good chance there are people who cherish you already, but the one person you need to really cherish you is you. Because if you cherish you, then the world can spin off in crazy ways, but you are okay. If you cherish you, you begin to change the way you feel about yourself. And the way you feel about yourself when you are cherished will make you merciful. It doesn't make you less than. You don't have to be beat up to do the right thing. You are inherently good, indomitably good. So when you're cherished, you move right into that goodness, because that is who you really are. Not all the things you were told that you remember more than anything else. That becomes your very natural action. To cherish yourself is to do the right thing. To love yourself is what so much of our resistance is against is like, if I'm too nice to me, I won't be a good person because I need the stick. The world will give you the stick. You could be the carrot. So let's practice for a few minutes. Let's do the rain, and then let's do the nurture. So think of something, whatever is, not think of something, be aware of something that's happening inside you right now, whatever it is. If it's joy, pay attention to that. If it's sadness, that. If it's weakness or strength or loneliness or feeling stuffed, whatever it is, recognize it. And then let's come to a state of acceptance. So, of course, you have it. Of course you have it. Doesn't everybody? Why not? You have it. Anger, frustration, the negatives, the positives as well. You have it. Accept it. And then investigate the nature of that, where it's from. How does it feel in your body? Does it feel in your knee, or is it in your heart? Is it in your face, or is it in your throat? What does the emotion look like, sound like, feel like? What color is it? Investigate. Curiosity, really, not judgment. We've had enough of that. Judge it, not. That it not be judged. Be curious. And see if you can go deep enough into it that you see you're looking at it, but it is not you. That you're the awareness of that and many other things. That you have clarity, and you have insight, but you're not the condition in the first place. And now, cherish yourself. Nurture. Love. Attend to. Be kind to, however you phrase it. But cherish yourself. Let this be the standard and not the critic. Let this be your natural, your go-to, your this is who I am. Let it be so. And may there be peace on earth. And let it begin with us. And so it is. I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.